the New York City comptroller settled a lawsuit with the quote-unquote Central Park Five. These were five teenagers who in 1989 were arrested for the rape of a 28-year-old woman in Central Park, hence the Central Park Five. It was a brutal crime, and the woman was beaten and all that. And all five men were convicted, or all five boys, they were underage, were convicted in 1990. And they served on average between 7 and 13 years. There's only one problem. None of these people committed the actual crime. And it turns out the NYPD kind of forced or coerced these confessions through long interrogations. And the person who did commit the crime was a serial rapist who it was later proven he confessed, and it was proven via DNA evidence that he was in fact the rapist. So the NYPD enforcing this confession also let an actual serial rapist out on the street for a very long time. Well, after a 10-year lawsuit, or a 12-year lawsuit, it was finally settled, and the Central Park Five have received a settlement of $41 million. The information about the DNA testing came out in 2002, and it took this long for them to get their settlement. So I just wanted to bring this story up and get Jeff's thoughts on it. What do you think about one of the biggest New York City wrongful conviction settlements in history of the Central Park Five?
This is what happens all too often in our justice system, is that, police and our justice system will cut corners, right? And that's essentially what the NYPD did. They wanted to solve the case. They wanted to just get it done, get their convictions, and, bump up that conviction rate when it comes to, the lawyers and stuff like that, the prosecutors. And so they didn't look at the evidence. They didn't do any of that. And they let these people, these five young black men, I assume they're black.
Four of them were black, one of them was Hispanic.
Yeah, see, you let these four black men and one Hispanic man, all minorities, rot in jail for so long on a crime that they didn't do, that they were coerced into admitting to doing, while they let a rapist out, a serial rapist out there, to victimize more women. But no, they're going to hang their banner and say, mission accomplished, for all that time. Now, I'm actually glad to see that there was actual justice in the story, but you can't replace those lost years with all that money. Now, $40 million is a good chunk. Imagine how much money the NYPD would have saved had they actually did their jobs and found the real rapist, instead of just spending the time trying to coerce these five young men into admitting to committing a crime that they didn't commit. It's gross injustice, and at the same time, they got a little bit of compensation for it. But right. I don't know if $40 million is a lot of money, but I would not trade 13 years of my life, or however long they were in prison for that kind of amount of money.
Especially when you're that young, to get 7 years when you're 7 to 13 years when you're age 14 to 16, that's insane. It destroys your entire life. And for people out there who are like, oh, well, how come the victim didn't know if she was attacked by five people or one person? The victim was severely injured, and she had a very bad head injury during the incident. So it's not the victim's fault at all. And for all she knew, these five people confessed to the crime, and she was beaten severely and was unconscious. It seemed like it was reasonable. They confessed. The NYPD said we had them dead to rights, and the NYPD they interrogated them for hours. They never videotaped the interrogation. They only videotaped the confession. They lied to them, said that they had their fingerprints all over this woman, that they had them dead to rights, witnesses, everything. And they got these guys to sign confessions, and of course they try to recant 2 weeks later. But when you go to a jury trial and you have four black and one Hispanic, but he was four dark-skinned males who are accused of a horrible crime to a 28-year-old white woman. I don't want to talk negatively about the victim, but this is the parameters of the case. And you have confessions Like, what are you supposed to do as a juror? But if you're the
Right.
NYPD, like, there was DNA evidence on the scene. Like, maybe it wasn't a common practice for the NYPD to use DNA in 1989, 1990, but like it existed. It was a high profile case. Even if it wasn't common practice, it would seem like it would have been a good idea to go the extra mile, especially since we know that the police, go a little harder for these high profile cases. So um, it was a horrible crime, and unfortunately, the injustice did not end with what happened to this poor woman. These poor like teenagers. It ruined their lives, and 40,
It took like
41.
six people had their lives fucked up.
Right.
And because
And
what? Because the NYPD wanted to save a little bit of time? Is that it? They just wanted to save time, solve a high-profile case so they could get their fucking, congratulations. Oh, look at that. Good job, guys.
right.
You
And
convicted
of
wrongfully
course, like
crime.
you're like, oh, horrible crime. Let me find the closest four minority people or five minority people in order to convict. By the way, they were. It was proven in 2002 that they did not do this crime. Everybody served their full sentence at that point already.
Mm-hmm.
The maximum sentence was 13 years. It took 12 more years to get the settlement. So like it's hard to go get some like moniker of justice. This was a
Right.
25-year process for these guys, and you took away their childhood, which they'll never get back. Even after they got out of prison, like they never get back their reputation. Like you ruined everybody's life involved. Like the NYPD ruined almost everybody's life involved because even the victim of the rape like feels bad for these kids. So
Yeah.
it's just disgusting, and all of those rapes, like even if all of those rapes that guy committed, the actual rapist committed, is on the NYPD like for not giving an honest investigation. That it was horrible.
Right. And you think that there's a little bit of I guess, a little bit of racism involved, I think, in this, and like racial profiling when it comes to like, because as far as I know, the NYPD isn't exactly the most racially sensitive organization.
Right.
Okay, so, calling them, saying that they're more of a racist organization isn't exactly coming out of nowhere because of this one case. Now, it's not like they don't have a fucking history of doing this kind of shit.
Oh, and like it even seemed racist. Their excuse for why they were fighting this lawsuit so hard. They fought this for 12 years. Almost every year of the Bloomberg term, they were fighting this case. And I understand the city of New York has to protect its own interests and wants to save money and all that. But like Bloomberg, instead of saying it was a tragedy and it never should have happened, was like, well, they had cause to believe that these people did it. I'm like, no, but they didn't do it, and there was no evidence indicating it. No witnesses, no nothing. It's not like witnesses saw five people attack a woman. It was one guy. It was one guy, and you arrested five people. Like there was no cause for this. They wanted to wrap this case up quickly. It was a high-profile victim, and I feel horrible for the victim. It was a vicious crime, but I also feel horrible for these people wrongfully convicted. And it just goes to show you, um, you know how these so-called men's rights activists talk about wrongful rape convictions.
Right.
When it's a wrongful rape conviction, it's usually not the victim responsible for the conviction. It's usually the police or somebody in the investigative side not doing their job. So
Right.
it's a horrible case all around, and I'm glad some moniker of justice was served.
I think I can agree that there's at least some little piece of justice, but you can't get back the amount of time that these innocent men spent behind bars. I mean, you can't get that back, but you can get something. I hope that they can use that money, to create a good life for them, I mean, to get their life. I'm pretty sure they've got their life back on track, and I just hope, that they can. I mean, you can never really get over something like this, but I hope the best for them, going forward, man, because what happened to them, it shouldn't be allowed, and I hope the NYPD and I hope our, politicians in New York and the criminal justice system maybe can learn from this and say, hey, maybe we need to, at least, even if you look at it in just a fiscal sense, because I would have saved $40 million of damages plus court costs and all that stuff fighting this case for however long that they've fought this case. It would have saved them money, and maybe they think, hey, maybe we'll do the smart thing and actually do our fucking jobs.
Right. And just two more quick anecdotes. One of these guys who served 7 years was 14 when convicted. I'm 23 now, so that's oh no, that's not exactly 7 years, but it's around that time. I can't imagine losing 14 to 14 to 21 of my life. Like, and technically part of the settlement was that the New York City did not admit any fault in this case. It's a $41 million settlement. They were at fault.